Hi, and welcome to another episode of Quietly Marketing, and another episode of Content Marketing. Today we're going to be looking at something very near and dear to my heart, which is going to be weird given the topic. It's content marketing and in-person events. So, if you pay attention to the yearly research that Content Marketing Institute does, you will see that they poll a bunch of marketers, a bunch of companies to see what type of marketing tactics they're using to help with their content marketing strategy. I believe, as you've heard multiple times, that content marketing is the only marketing left. Not my quote. That's the great Seth right there. That was his quote. And what's interesting when I read these is that now we're up to 81% of companies are utilizing in-person events as part of their content marketing strategy. And here's the interesting thing: 75% of the people polled for the survey put it as their number one most effective tactic in their marketing strategy. Not only that, it's been that way for the past 6 years. So why is this? This should be surprising as you hear it, unless you've been reading about it. The reason why it should be surprising is in-person seems like something that just isn't done anymore. It's not done as much. We certainly live in a very much a digital world now, and I think people take the idea of meeting people in person as people like to text each other now. We don't call as much. Certainly, just log on to your social media accounts, log on to Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. I mean, this is where people live. Snapchat, Instagram. These social channels keep coming, and Snapchat's a great one where it's growing in popularity. At first glance, it led a lot of experts to believe that this trend is just going to continue, and people are continuing to do business online. Sales people are just going to be using LinkedIn exclusively. There's going to be no reason for that call. People don't like picking up the call. Is it annoying to them? And that's kind of the mentality that a lot of people are getting into now. Having worked very closely with the sales department in my previous job, the amount of time and attention spent on LinkedIn, and the salespeople reaching out to LinkedIn, reaching out through LinkedIn to their prospective clients is, I don't even know the number, double, triple, quadrupled. And every single month I feel like we're coming up with more tactics in order to utilize those channels. And it's not to say these channels aren't great and this isn't effective. I think people just saw where it was going, and that's where all the marketing efforts were put. So here's the misconception. When you look at these stats, you're actually seeing that in-person events are the most effective type of marketing that you can do. So before I go into why I think these numbers have grown so greatly and the effective behind them, is let's talk about what I mean by in-person events. So exclusively for this one, I'm talking about this would be attending, speaking, sponsoring any kind of industry event or conference that you can go to, and even to some degree the most effective. And the only one that I have not been a part of is actually hosting an event themselves. So taking Content Marketing Institute and Joe Pulizzi, for example, who came up with the research that led to the inspiration behind this episode. Content Marketing Institute holds a yearly conference called Content Marketing World. So when I talk about hosting an event, that's what I would be referring to. So having your own event. So all the major players, in the digital space and in the marketing space currently have one. You look at Salesforce, you look at Marketo, you look at Moz. Each one of these companies has their own conference. And clearly this is effective, because why do they keep doing this? And why do the number of conferences around America grow continually by 4 to 5% each year for the past 5 to 6 years, and that number is continuing to grow? There's something to this. So why do I believe that they've grown? Why do I believe that these in-person events have become so popular, and why these conferences continue to grow? And I actually see that trend continue to grow. So going back to my previous example, when you log into Facebook, when you log into LinkedIn, when you log into Twitter, I think that people are getting to the point where it's almost like a content overload. Now, while I'm not one of the people who believes that you can have too much content to sift through, I think the idea of having as much content as possible to find the information that you need, to complete the task that you need, to find the product that you want, I don't think there can be enough content out there. I mean, all it takes is a Google search to sift through that information in order to get it. But it can get a little overwhelming when you go on to when you go into LinkedIn, when you go into Twitter, when you go into Facebook, when you go into your feed, the amount of content that's just thrown at you, it's very difficult to start picking out individuals that you want to follow, individual companies that you think are standing out, and you're losing that relationship that you used to get from being a little bit more in person and even having more phone calls. So think about how impersonal it seems when, I think this happens pretty much anyone listening to this, is when you add a new LinkedIn contact and within a few seconds you get bombarded by a sales message from that person you just connected to. How is that an effective strategy? This is a sales thing, but this is just awful. I mean, it seems so impersonal. It seems even worse than a cold call because there's a lack of effort. You clearly have been written to based on a template. You just have like insert name here, insert company here, insert your problem here. You're just getting bombarded with this. Almost like I prefer a cold call at this point. And that's what I'm getting at. That's what I think most people think as well. I would almost prefer the more effort if it's as long as it's a good sales call. I would ask more people who are better at sales than I on effective tactics there. And I just think using those types of sales tactics over LinkedIn has gotten so impersonal, and it's difficult to form a relationship with anybody at that point. Now, where LinkedIn can be useful, obviously, and as I've talked to before, is publishing, putting content out there, and getting to know these people ahead of time and consider them an expert before they start selling you anything, trying to create relationships. So, what's this all leading to? This is leading to people craving face-to-face contact. You know, where I think, especially this generation, people think that they want less and less face-to-face contact. It's actually the opposite. People are craving it, and this isn't just from the older generations. This is, millennials are attending these events at record numbers as well. I think they find it almost like a novelty, like, oh look how cute, I can actually meet somebody in person. But having that face-to-face and the ability to build meaningful relationships with people. And of course, I'm not saying that digital isn't still incredibly important. I think that's how you can still introduce, that's where content marketing is so important. You can get introduced to people by their great content, but I think people are going to go out of their way, and the stats are showing that they are, to go to these conferences and actually meet these people in person, to form relationships, actually get more of a conversation going with them. Because as good as a blog can be, as good as a video episode like this can be, you really won't get to know somebody and their expertise and their knowledge on a subject until you can meet them face to face and actually ask them questions on the spot and really get their insights on certain topics. That's when you're really going to get to know somebody. It's where you're going to really build meaningful relationships. These conferences can cost a lot of money. They cost between $1,500, $2,000, sometimes more than that, where you can get the online content for normally about, a couple $100, $250. So why are people going to these events? It's because there's that more, that deeper level, that people, creating a relationship, just attending these things, networking. So I encourage everyone to start using these tactics if you haven't already. So if it's within your own company, I really recommend taking a few people who want to do this and start sending them to these conferences, meeting these people in person. There's always breakfast, lunches, there's always drink meetings that you can go to, these networking events, to just start talking to people. And then even those people are more likely to even come back and now read your content. Because hey, I met that guy, and they're going to read your content. You're going to get more engagement in all the content that you're probably producing at this point and putting all this effort into. Getting that face-to-face is just going to help. Sponsoring these events, getting your name out there. I know getting a booth seems kind of cliche, but especially in the manufacturing world, people still see that as the most profitable way and the best way to build new business. It's that face-to-face, it's that handshake. Hosting an event is, speaking, let me go back one. Speaking at an event, the most important. If you're a subject matter expert, start or find your expert within your company and start submitting them to speak at conferences. there's no better sales technique and there's no better way to prove your worth than to go up there and speak for 15 minutes plus on a certain topic. At the end of it, you're gonna have people coming to you. They're gonna have people coming up to you and asking you for your business or asking you for your expertise because you've just gone up there and proved it. Don't do it if you're not good at speaking, because that can have the reverse effect, but I highly recommend you doing that, all right? Now, hosting an event is something I have not done yet, certainly something I want to do in the future, but I can tell you, just listening to Joe Pulizzi and reading some of his books, it seems that is the #1 revenue stream for content marketing world. Anyone from CMI listening, if that's wrong, I apologize, but I read Town Inc. from Joe Pulizzi, and it sounds like that's one of the major revenue streams. And not only that, speaking is great, hosting shows you really have a level of interest in a level of expertise within your industry. And I would, in the future, I'd love to talk with Joe Pulizzi to actually see what kind of effectiveness they get, how many new people, how many new clients they get from CMI. But hosting, it shows that you're the expert. Talk about brand awareness. If you can really start to get people coming to that event, people are going to start to know your brand and think of you every time they think of that subject. So we live in a world that's getting more digital. These social channels are certainly going to become more and more prevalent, but I think what's happening and what we're seeing is that these in-person events, face-to-face is already the most effective tactic, and as a result, I think more companies are going to start catching on. I think we're going to continue to see these conferences rise, and I think that you need to be part of it. So start attending these conferences, start sponsoring these conferences, start speaking at these conferences, and if you can, start hosting these conferences yourself. That might not be for you. It's very expensive and complicated, all right. So thank you. Thank you for meeting me today. And next week I'm actually going to be at a conference, go figure, at SMX Events in Seattle, and I will be recording from there for my next episode. All right, so I will talk to you again, and thank you again, and I'll talk to you next week.